transition to the assembly candidates because you are going to the polls on June 28th. So welcome, and as with the other candidates, you will have 2 minutes to introduce yourself and tell us why you're running for assembly. So I'm gonna let Helen go first and then followed by Deb.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here. My name is Helen Qiu. New York, I love you. 纽約，我愛你。我是中山大學來的。我係中山大學嘅，用粵語向大家問好。我係客家人，係客家人。So I just use 3 different languages to say hello to my constituents who probably can only understand one of those languages. So I am very honored to be here. And I want to let everybody know that I graduated from Columbia University and I had senior level project managing experience in Silicon Valley, managing multi-million-dollar projects. So I'm running because I love my New York and I want to contribute uniquely at this very critical moment of our history in the New York State. And my district is New York State Assembly District 65. And it consists of Financial District, Seaport, Lower East Side, Chinatown, Little Italy, and a little bit of South Alphabet City, and a little bit of Soho. Thank you very much. I hope that you will enjoy this presentation that we are going to show you and know more about me. And I want to ask for your vote to vote for me. Thank you.
First, thank you everybody for attending tonight's event, and thank you AWA and the new nonpartisan organization to actually host these forums. My name is Denny Salas, and I am the Democrat running for State Assembly. And just to let you know a little bit about me, I'm first generation in this country. My parents are from the Dominican Republic, and when they moved here to the States, they moved to the Lower East Side. And when we were growing up, we grew up pretty poor. We used to collect cans for money, and when my parents sought other economic opportunities, they moved to New England. But in Lawrence, Massachusetts, we actually almost died in a case of arson when someone lit our house on fire while we were all inside. It's not true. But despite all those challenges, we still achieved the American dream. My dad went back to school, got his GED, got his college degree, and then we lived at white picket fence and all. And my siblings and I have now done very well because of that. And when I look at this district, if you include, there's an 11% Jewish population. When you include them, it is a majority minority district of about 72.2%, 36.9% Asian, 18.1% Latino, 6.2% Black, and the aforementioned 11% Jewish population. And when we talk to our neighbors, and we listen to our community, what you often hear is that right now, they feel like they're not being heard. They feel like the issues around public safety, education for families, and economic opportunities are not being delivered. And that's why I entered this race. I was the last entrant in this race. I entered at the very first day of petitioning of March 1st. And I looked around and looked at my current competition in the Democratic primary, and I love Helen, but she's a Republican, and I'm not running. And so if I win, I'm facing her in the general. But what I saw is that these individuals are trying to push their own agenda. They're not actually listening to the community and try to actually offer real solutions to help this community out. So that's why I'm in this race, because of my personal experience, my professional experience, and recognizing that in this immigrant community, we need somebody that actually can listen to them and try to deliver the solutions that they need.
Sure. Okay. This question is for both candidates. Surging crime and public safety is the #1 issue on the minds of Asian Americans, and Asian New Yorkers particularly. How much of a role do you believe bail reform plays into the increase in repeat offenders, and what are your plans to address the increase in crime? Thank you.
Actually, Denny, would you do this one?
Sure, absolutely. Look, there's 2 particular areas that need to get fixed when it comes to bail reform. One is that if you are an individual that allegedly commits a hate crime, you get released. We look in our community, we already know that last year there was a 361% rise in Asian hate crimes, and anti-Asian hate crimes, and additionally over 400% increase in anti-Semitic attacks. My wife is pregnant. My wife is Jewish, excuse me, and she's pregnant with her very first child that's due in July. Right now we have 2 dogs, and she's afraid to walk our dogs at night. It's absolutely true. And we recognize that we're not doing enough to make sure we keep our population safe. So one, we have to make sure that we're actually remanding individuals that are allegedly committing hate crimes. 2, we're letting people go that get caught with an illegal weapon. That's insane. I think anyone can agree that if you're an individual that has an intent to harm somebody, and yet you only remove the illegal weapon, that's not gonna remove the intent. And it's additionally not gonna stop them from acquiring another illegal weapon. That's actually right now happening with bail reform. So that's one thing that we need to do is fix bail reform. 2, what I've called for additionally is to follow and see what district attorneys are doing across the state. Because right now, we're not actually creating a sense of deterrence when it comes to prosecuting hate crimes. A lot of individuals get a slap on the wrist and then just get released with nothing. So we have to make sure that we're tracking what DAs are doing. We're making sure they're going all the way when it comes to hate crimes, and to ensure that we're creating a sense of deterrence to keep our community safe. So we'll stop there.
I'm very happy about this question because this touched the basis that Asian communities is an organic component in our entire New York City and New York State. This question transcends Asian community. And this is a question that faces every New Yorkers in our state and our city. And I am going to repeal, in no confusing terms, I'm going to repeal the current no cash bail law. And I'm going to introduce new laws that will solve the inhumane conditions in jails such as Rikers Island. And that's number 1. And number 2, I think to solve our crimes, we have to have 4 pillars. This is the number 1 that I just mentioned, is we have to repeal the no cash bail reform and also introduce a new reform. And the second, I think, currently we are building too many inner city jails. And one of the most prevalent mega jail is being built as we speak in Chinatown. This should not happen. We don't need any more inner city jails in New York City, in Buffalo, in anywhere in New York State. We have a beautiful large land that God has given us, and we should do it just like how God is doing it to build a city of refuge for low crime criminals and give them a chance to rebuild their life, give them an opportunity to actually learn how to be a responsible citizens. We all learn, including myself. So that's the second part. I think we should not build any more in the city jails. And third, I don't think we should defund the police. I think we should increase police funding, and we should let the police do their jobs. Right now, their hands are tied. If you talk to a policeman, they will tell them their hands are tied. That's not how we let the police do their jobs and to protect our community. They put their lives on the line, and we should put our policies on the line with them. So I fully support that. And then the 4th pillar is the blind welfare. Currently, we have a blind welfare system. And when a criminal come out and have their finish their term in the jail, there's no system that help them to reintegrate into the society. And that's a failure as officials and as a system. We should help. in our state, our city, and I'm a Christian pastor. So I work with people who have committed crimes. I talk to them. I actually talk to a lot of homeless people too. I ask them where do they come from. One people with no shoes told me that she came from Canada. And I asked her, how did you come to Canada? How did you come to New York City? She didn't answer my question. And another person came from DC, another person came from Pennsylvania. So this is not a New York City problem. And we have to solve the problem collectively as a state and let this topic be on the floor in Albany. And I intend to do that. Thank you.
Great. Next question for both of you. Do you support Het Calandra law, which would keep the SHSAT as the sole admissions criteria for the original 3 specialized high schools? What are the ways that you would propose to address the issue of integration versus academic excellence in our specialized high schools? Helen, you get to go first.
Wonderful. I am a city council member in Upper West Side, and I'm currently the 2nd VP of the city council. I'm very honored to answer this question. And I trust if you work hard, God will reward your work. So I believe a merit-based academic system is the most rewarding for every parent and every children. And I think when it comes to high school, we need more good high schools. If we can only just drive outside of New York City, we see many, many excellent high schools, right? But we don't have as many within our city limit. So how to bring our high school entire education level, elevate this level is one of the challenge. And I do support the SHSAT as a mission criteria. We could make a very small percentage of exceptions, consider certain circumstances for special cases on case-by-case situations. But I also support, besides SHSAT, I also support a career-oriented curriculum, because we have many talents. God gave every children different talents. Michael Jordan probably will not get into Stevenson, right? But he is a very talented man, and I love Michael Jordan. So how can we let Michael Jordan have a chance to be who he is? And Michael Jordan was on the brink, not able to play basketball at all, if you read his bio. So every great star or every great man and woman, we find they have very challenging stories behind them. Dickens, right? He wrote David Copperfield, and then that is his own story, and that is very touching. And we should look at those and encourage our young children to never let any test, let any setback to stop them, but to encourage them to press forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to follow up and just ask specifically,
Please.
because the Het Calandra is a state law. It is something that has been in the news for the last 3 years. So, you know, if you were elected on the assembly, it may come to you as a vote. So I just want to clarify, if Het Calandra law came to you for a vote, would you keep it or would you repeal it?
I will vote to support the specialty high school. Thank you.
Denny?
Yes, I look forward to answering these questions. So, I would actually write my own legislation, to be completely honest. I believe that we need to expand specialized high schools in New York City. We need to increase it, I believe, to a number of 16 by 2035. I believe that we need to be doing a lot more to encourage the development of high-performance schools. I think we got away from that. So, but I believe that a standardized exam is not the only measurement of a student's ability. And that's why what I've called for is an additional option for students and families. And that's a performance-based assessment. Now, what is that? It basically is the same thing that a doctoral student does when they defend their dissertation. They go in front of a group of teachers, and then they have to defend a project that they worked on throughout the course of the year. It's something, by the way, that currently exists in New York State right now. upstate New York, there's a consortium of about 27 schools that worked and created a project-based assessment program instead to allow high school students to take that rather than the Regents exam. So we already see the history, and what we've been able to see is some students actually show off their true ability when they go deep into a lot of the specific issues for something that they picked. So I believe that it should be an additional option, and I don't believe that the standardized exam should be the only option. Now, we do need to expand access to specialized high schools by increasing them, but additionally that gets down to another issue about gifted and talented programs. We need to expand gifted and talented programs across all middle schools in New York, but we should also be doing it to a lot of our high schools, because we know that there's some kids that may have not made it to specialized high schools, but they go to a good high school and they should be able to actually receive and get access to rigorous programming. So that's actually part of my education program, but you know, there's a number of things that we do need to improve local performance schools, but we're not getting into that, so. Yeah.
Well, you clearly have a lot of ideas for improving education, so I'm gonna ask you that pointed question that I asked Helen. If, you know, if the law came to your desk as an assembly member, would you keep it or would you repeal it?
I'll keep it, and then I would introduce my own piece.
Okay, so you will keep Peg Calandra for the specialized high school. Okay, great, thank you, Danny. Phil?
Okay. We have a Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, and the day he took office, he has a 10-page memo listing the laws that he will not enforce. And the problem with that is that this propagates to other counties, and other district attorneys are considering to do the same. The problem with that is that we voted them in to enforce the law, and what we're seeing is we have DAs such as Alvin Bragg coming up with a list of laws that they will not enforce. My question to you is, do you support the current law that governors should remove district attorneys, or they could remove district attorneys if they do not do their job? It's a yes or no question. Do you support it or you don't support it?
Well, it's not a simple question, I'll be honest with you. I'm not trying to avoid it because I'm gonna answer it, and I wanna provide context. My father-in-law has been a police officer for over 30 years. And I've sat with the sergeants, captains, lieutenants, and detectives, benevolent associations. And we've had a conversation about that memo, which is now known as a Day 1 memo. And when you're a police officer, your job is not only to protect your neighborhood and your community, but additionally to get home at night, to make sure that you're safe, that you get home to your family. And what the Day 1 memo projected, and what the implication of it was, is that if I'm an officer, why am I gonna put my life at risk when I know that whoever this individual is, whoever I arrest, I'm gonna bring to the precinct, they're just gonna be let go. So that was the actual mentality that's been spread to a lot of our police departments across the city. And now, when it comes to the governor's power, I do believe that it's written in law, it's absolute, so it exists, I support it as is. But also, that gets a little bit tricky, and I'm not trying to hedge, but he is an elected official. That means that the city actually elected him into office. So we know that it's not a lifetime appointment. We do have elections here. That means that he is responsible to the citizenry, and that means that he's gonna have to face voters again. So it's tricky, so yes, it's law, they have the power to do that, but again, it is an elected position, so at the end of the day, the voters do have a say.
We elected them to enforce the law and do the job. Okay. One second. Okay,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
DA Alvin Bragg has been one of the most notorious and most disappointed appointment we have elected to the office. Probably right next to de Blasio. So, there's my answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right.
New York legislators and Governor Hochul signed the Asian American Data Disaggregation Act in December of 2021. The act will mandate the collection of national and ethnicity data for Asians and only Asians. No other minorities, which will be broken down into the 10 to 15 subcategories on the state agency forms, including forms for healthcare and for schools. Many Asians feel that this disproportionately impacts them and is targeted against the larger Asian subcategories, when considering that all Asians are the smallest minority group in the United States and in New York. If elected, how would you support these concerns through legislation? Helen, you go first.
Is it the last question?
Oh, is this the last question?
Yeah, is
No,
it?
there will be
Oh,
one
okay.
more
Oh,
question.
because I have, I want to talk a little bit about inflation. Because I think that's very, very important. If this is the last question, I would ask for
It's not.
permission to talk about it. Okay, so maybe I have other chance to talk about it. So for this question, I think the answer is obvious. It's a unison voice among all the Asian communities. I have not heard one voice that would support this. So let's say if it's a voice that, let's say if I were the governor, okay, and then I have this brilliant idea to want to do something, and then the people that actually is affected by this, whatever brilliant idea I have, in unison are voicing their opposition of it. Guess what? I'm not going to enforce it, because I will realize, I will have some reflection and say, my most brilliant idea may not be that brilliant because the entire constituents do not like it. So that's how I will work as an assembly person if I have the opportunity to serve New York. If I have the most brilliant idea, and if you come to me and come to my office and tell me, Helen, that may not be the best idea, we don't like it, we want you to change this way and that way, I will listen. I will actually actively come to you to solicit your input before I put something forth. So thank you very much for that question.
It's a very lazy law, wasn't it? At the end of the day, is when you group all these ethnicities together and assume that they fall under one category, we know that's extremely lazy. And it's representative of how we've gone about legislating. Instead of being targeted about focusing in certain areas to actually fix some of your issues, we've all of a sudden grouped all these individuals together. So no, I don't like the law. I think it's lazy. Obviously, if we can strengthen it by making sure that there's all categories that fall within the API, then that's what it should be done, not how it currently is constructed.
Okay. Just to be clear, so right now, most of the racial demographic data on the forms are broken down into white, Black, Hispanic, Asian, and other multiracial. So Asian would be the only category where they would break out into the subcategories. So are you saying, Denny, that you would actually expand it? Yeah. Would you expand? Are you saying that you would be in favor of expanding subcategories for all the other racial categories?
Yes.
Or okay,
Yes.
that's what I was.
I'm sorry. Yeah. That,
Okay.
sorry.
Great,
Thank you
great.
for the clarification. Yes.
No problem. I know that we're very familiar with it, but maybe the larger audience
Yes.
may not be, so that's why I want. Phil, you get to ask the last question.
Sure. Inflation is a serious problem. We all work and our salaries are not going up as fast as prices of milk or cheese or eggs. As state legislators, the state collects taxes. Right? What will be your solution to relieve consumers? And as we see, inflation will be a problem. It's here to stay, and it will take many years to bring it down. So I'd like to hear what's your solution.
It's not going to be just a state issue. It's certainly going to be a nationwide one, and we've seen multiple different reasons why. But let's just look at how it's really affecting the community itself right now in this particular district. We have over 40% of seniors that live below the poverty line in the district. And you've touched upon this earlier about food insecurity. I've volunteered and participated in a number of these drives, and I've created my own food drives, where we have served a lot of Asian seniors in our community. Minister's Temple, this one oldest Baptist church in New York City, hosts First Friday of every month, where they serve a bunch of food. And there's a number of other organizations that are participating and helped out. And the one thing that we've seen lately is that they're not getting as much food as they used to because the costs have been too high. So now there's a number of seniors that, again, living below the poverty line, that rely on this food for a month, sometimes a week, sometimes 2 weeks, whatever it may be, that now they're not getting the nutrition, the food that they actually need to survive. Now, as far as how we combat inflation, first, we do have to start making stuff in America again. I think we've seen part of the process where we offshored a lot of our products and manufacturing, that now when you can't bring it back soon enough, or when you have other foreign nations that have also shut down through COVID or the other lockdowns, that creates the supply issue. And then that's what we've been seeing. It's been a supply and demand issue, but additionally it's been the fact that we're not manufacturing enough of goods here. Now, how can the state alleviate a lot of these issues? One, you can look at tax breaks. And I'll give you a perfect example of a completely unnecessary tax break. For small businesses, for example, in New York City, something called the unincorporated business tax. That if you are a business owner and you're looking to do business in New York City, just New York City alone, you're automatically slapped with a 4.5% tax. That's ridiculous. I'm like, come on. And there's stuff like that we can remove to actually make the cost of operation lower and make sure that prices are cheaper and actually more accessible for a lot of the citizens here in New York City. So I think taxes is a way that we can do it on a local level and a state level, but then when it comes to combating inflation as a whole, we have to look at ensuring that we're actually producing a lot of our goods here in our country rather than importing them, which has actually led to a rise in prices.
Would you support temporary suspensions of certain tax revenues from collecting, just to control the prices?
Not temporary, I look for permanent solutions. I mean, to be honest with you, I think the gas tax holiday that they recently passed, yes, that's a good idea for now, but again, that's not going to stop the rate of inflation if it continues to go up. So we have to look at other avenues to make sure that's more permanent solution to drive cost of operation down for a lot of these businesses. So yes, temporary stuff can work, but it's temporary. Inflation's not gonna stop, Inflation hasn't stopped, forever, so, yeah.
Thank you very much. So, inflation, the idea that inflation cannot be solved in a short period of time, I do not agree. I hope we'll solve it if we collectively work on it together. And we can do it even if the federal do not have a sufficient law to help to curb inflation. State, New York State, we are New Yorkers, we can do it. New Yorkers, I hope we can do it together as a New York State. In our western part of New York State, we have oil and natural gas supplies. And I hope that's the first keyword, is energy sector group. I hope that we will encourage energy sector group to invest and also to cut down regulations so they can invest in helping New York to produce our own energy independence. So that's number one. Number two, I think we need to curb entitlement. So just now I mentioned that we have this blind welfare system. I think it's hurting people. And I live right next to projects. They are my neighbors. But I see young people living in the projects. I don't like it. Why? I think they have a brilliant future. They shouldn't be living in the projects. I always go over to them and say, why are you, hanging out, chilling, I don't like it. I don't believe that's what you like, right? Qiu. I talked to many of my friends, and they all agree with me. They say, yeah, that's a great idea. We don't want to see young people 20 years old living in the projects as if that's their permanent residence. No. So I hope we will cut down entitlement and create job opportunities and give them real solutions. Let them see the value that God sees in them. Help them to, be the provider, not to receive entitlement from the city or the state. So we need to cut down entitlements. And third, that's why Danny is my good friend. I also love manufacturing.
You actually get along very well.
Yeah, we do. We met before. And I do support manufacturing in our own state and maybe a little bit suburb of our own city. I do support that. And then I also think that particular manufacturing idea can be coupled with the low crime offenders and some of the homeless populations. That can be coupled together, because when we talk about manufacturing, it means a large plant, right? A little bit outside of city. So we need a lot of people, we need a lot of manpower. So we will attract young people. We see many beautiful young people here. I hope beautiful young people will see the opportunity of jobs in our state may not be inside New York City, but a little bit outside. And you can fly, just like the birds can fly, higher outside of the city. So I hope that can be created, some kind of combination of these ideas in a systematic way. And the fourth thing, again, 4 pillars, right? I think we need to end all mandates. I talk to many small business owners. Guess what? They don't like the government giving them a relief check, because that's $970. What problem can it solve with $970? Maybe 2 meals if you eat a lobster. So that cannot solve a small business problems. It's a fantasy. How do we solve small business problems? They have a very important problem. They cannot find good workers, because we need to end all mandates. We need to hire them back. We need to hire back city workers. We need to allow people to work. And that is another opportunity. So I hope that you like my ideas, and please write to me too, so I can listen to you, and we can collaborate and have the most brilliant plan for our entire state that will benefit everyone in our state. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. It's a pleasure to host both of you. I just want to remind all our viewers and everyone here, the Assembly primary election is coming up very quickly. Really do your research. I hope the session today we had with both Denny and Helen was helpful to you. For the primary, you do need to be registered for a party, and you can only vote for the candidates in your party. But I just want to say some words regarding the session. We brought a lot of candidates, and some are Republicans and some are Democrats, and I think all of the audience will see they are very thoughtful, they're very considerate, they are New Yorkers that really care about where we're going, and regardless of what party they belong to, we have common problems, we have solutions where we see eye to eye on, and I hope that this will create a continued dialogue, and that we can, really elect the people that best represent us. So do some research, participate in the primary if you can, and November is gonna come up really fast. So thank you everyone for listening and for participating, and I thank you all the candidates that were here today.
And thank you, Compass, for giving us the stage.
Yes. Thank you, Compass, for hosting. Everyone.
And we never share any of the questions to the candidates.
Yes.
They've been hearing it
Yes,
first.
I just want to reinforce that, yes,
guarantee
these questions were only circulated within the Asian Wave Alliance leaders, and none of the candidates were aware of these questions before today.
Oh yeah, well, I need a picture. You want to do a picture of all the candidates?
Oh, yes.